Ladies and gentlemen, there's a kind of power you hold that doesn't require a single word. A power that makes a man stop in his tracks, rethink his behavior, and chase you with more focus and intensity than he ever has before. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, and it's not manipulative. It's silent. And when you master these silent behaviors, the ones I'm about to reveal, you don't just attract attention, you command effort. You don't chase him, you make him rise to meet you. Let me show you exactly how that power works. There's a certain kind of power that doesn't need to be announced, explained, or performed. It's the kind of power that comes from a woman who knows who she is, who understands her worth, and who isn't moved by superficial attention or momentary validation. When a woman embraces that quiet confidence, something interesting happens. Men don't just notice her, they pursue her. They rise to meet her, and they chase her with more effort, focus, and intention than ever before. It starts with the silence of someone who no longer rushes to fill every space. When you stop trying to impress, to prove, to convince, you create a sense of intrigue. You allow him to lean in instead of overwhelming him with your availability. This silence isn't about withholding, it's about breathing. It's about letting things unfold without forcing the pace. A man becomes more curious when you aren't constantly explaining who you are. He begins to chase because he wants to discover it himself. Your silence becomes even more magnetic when you control your reactions. Instead of spiraling when he takes a little longer to reply, instead of demanding answers or showing anxiety, you stay centered. You respond when you're ready, with clarity instead of panic. That calmness sends a message: you are not living on the edge of his behavior. You are grounded in your own life, your own rhythm, your own priorities. And the moment a man realizes he doesn't control your emotional world, he starts trying harder to earn space in it. Then there's the silent act of choosing your boundaries. You don't argue about how you deserve respect. You demonstrate it with what you accept and what you walk away from. You don't raise your voice about your standards, you simply enforce them. A man can feel when a woman values herself deeply, and that feeling challenges him to rise. He starts chasing not because you created a rule, but because your energy naturally commands effort. Your silence here is not passive, it is potent, firm, and unshakable. Another silent behavior that pulls men in is the way you guard your emotional access. You don't pour your heart out to someone who hasn't earned it. You give pieces of yourself slowly, thoughtfully, with intention. This isn't manipulation, it's wisdom. When a man realizes he has to put in effort to truly know you, your fears, your dreams, your values, he becomes invested. He chases because he knows the connection he's building isn't superficial. It's something rare, something meaningful, something worth holding on to. There's also the silence of having a full life outside of him. You don't announce that you're busy, you simply are. You don't say you have standards, you show it. With your commitments, your passions, your friendships, your goals. A man is drawn to a woman whose world doesn't shrink just because he entered it. Your life continues to move forward, and he feels the difference between someone who makes him her entire identity and someone who welcomes him into a life that already has depth. That difference is intoxicating. It makes him chase because he sees you as someone who adds to his life, not someone who depends on it. There's power in how you maintain mystery, not by playing games, but by understanding that you don't need to narrate every detail of who you are. You reveal yourself through experience, not exposition. When you allow some parts of your life to remain unspoken, a man feels compelled to discover them. He puts in effort, asks deeper questions, initiates more contact because he senses that beneath your calm surface is a rich inner world. Silence becomes the invitation that words could never match. Your silence becomes even more impactful when you don't over-explain your needs. You express them once with clarity and let your actions reinforce them. Instead of fighting to prove a point, you let the situation reveal its truth. If he shows up, great. If he doesn't, you don't beg, negotiate, or justify. You quietly step back. That unspoken strength is what makes a man reconsider his behavior and chase you with greater intention. It's the absence of drama that makes your presence so valuable. Then there's the silent confidence that comes from emotional independence. You don't rely on him to make you feel beautiful, secure, or worthy. You appreciate his compliments, but they don't define you. That inner wholeness becomes a gravitational pull. Men chase women who aren't looking to be rescued or completed, but are willing to share a journey. Your emotional independence makes you stand out in a world full of neediness, and standing out quietly is one of the strongest attractions there is. Another quiet behavior that makes men chase is the way you handle distance. When he pulls back, you don't chase, you don't panic, you don't try to prove your value, you allow the space. You let him feel the contrast between your presence and your absence. You give him the opportunity to realize what it feels like when you're not there. This silence is not punishment, it's self-respect. And that self-respect becomes the reason he comes back with more clarity, more effort, and more desire to reconnect. One of the most powerful, silent behaviors is the way you move on with grace when someone doesn't deserve you. You don't create chaos, you don't explode, you don't beg, you simply walk away. That quiet exit speaks louder than any dramatic goodbye ever could. A man feels the finality in your calm retreat. He feels the loss in the emptiness you leave behind. That moment often becomes the catalyst that makes him chase harder than ever. Not because you manipulated him, but because your self-worth shook him awake. A woman who embodies these silent behaviors doesn't need loud gestures, complicated strategies, or endless explanations. Her silence carries intention. Her silence communicates standards. Her silence reflects emotional depth. And her silence reveals a level of self-value that makes a man realize he has to earn his place in her life. When a woman understands that her silence is not emptiness but power, she stops trying to convince a man to choose her. Instead, she becomes someone he pursues naturally, someone he feels drawn to, someone he doesn't want to lose. Her silence becomes the spark that ignites his effort, his curiosity, his attraction, and ultimately his desire to chase her harder than he ever expected. And when this kind of quiet strength becomes part of the way you move through the world, something profound begins to shift in the dynamics between you and the men who encounter you. Because the truth is, effort is inspired, not demanded. And nothing inspires a man more than a woman who carries herself with a calm, steady confidence that doesn't need to be announced. That confidence becomes the standard he must rise to meet. The more you embrace these silent behaviors, the more he begins to feel a subtle but undeniable pull. It's not the pull of manipulation or emotional games, it's the pull of respect mixed with fascination. He starts to realize that he can't afford to take you lightly. He can feel that you aren't sitting around waiting for him. You aren't rearranging your life around his availability. You aren't treating him like the center of your universe. And the moment he senses that, truly senses it, he begins to step forward with a different kind of energy. That's when effort becomes consistent instead of sporadic. That's when messages come earlier in the day, conversations deepen, and gestures become more intentional. Because men put effort into what they fear losing. They invest in what feels rare. And your silence, your calm presence, your emotional steadiness, these qualities make you someone who doesn't just stand out, but someone he feels compelled to prioritize. There's a transformative power in the way you respond to uncertainty. Instead of spiraling into fear when he seems distracted or distant, you pause, you let the moment breathe, you don't interrogate or chase validation, you give him the space to show where he stands. That silence isn't about punishing him, it's about honoring yourself. It shows that your peace won't be disrupted by temporary shifts in energy. And that emotional poise becomes a kind of magnetism he can't ignore. A man notices when a woman refuses to internalize his inconsistency as her inadequacy. He notices when she doesn't let his delays dictate her emotions. That kind of unspoken confidence pulls him toward her with a sense of urgency. It makes him reevaluate how he's showing up. It makes him correct course without her having to raise her voice or explain her worth. The silence does the talking. Another subtle behavior that makes him chase harder is the way you express appreciation. Not over the top, not exaggerated, not given too soon or too easily. You appreciate real effort when it happens, but you don't reward bare minimum gestures with grand emotional responses. You create a natural contrast between effort and passivity. That contrast is what teaches him how to treat you, not through lectures, but through consistency. He begins to understand that access to your warmth is tied to his level of effort, and that understanding motivates him more than any conversation could. Your silence also becomes powerful in moments when you choose observation over assumption. Instead of reacting emotionally to every shift you watch, you let his behavior reveal his intentions. You allow patterns to show up, and the more you observe, the more aligned your actions become with what you genuinely deserve. Men can feel when a woman is attuned to reality instead of fantasy. It makes them step up because they know you are not someone who will convince yourself to stay where effort isn't being given. There's an art to speaking less and communicating more. It's the way you hold yourself, the way you say no without apology, the way you express your desires without pressuring him into meeting them, when you speak only when necessary, when you choose your words rather than spilling them from insecurity. You create a sense of maturity and self-control that men find deeply attractive. It makes every word you do say land with more weight. It makes him lean in to listen. It makes him take you seriously. Another silent behavior that pulls him toward you is the way you maintain your joy. You don't make him responsible for your happiness. You don't all apart when he disappoints you. You don't depend on his attention to feel emotionally balanced. You continue living with enthusiasm. You laugh. You pursue your passions. You nurture your friendships. And when he sees that your emotional world isn't tied to his presence, it does something to him. It wakes him up. It makes him see that being part of your life is a privilege, not a right. And privileges must be earned. Your joy becomes a silent reminder that he's not your only source of fulfillment. That realization lights a fire under him. It makes him step up because he wants to be a meaningful addition to your world, not a disruption or a detour. A woman who creates her own joy becomes someone a man feels drawn to chase because she represents a life he wants to be closer to. There's power in the silence of self-restraint. When you resist the urge to confront every tiny issue, when you choose not to correct every misunderstanding, when you allow moments to pass without reacting, you create emotional stability. That stability is rare. It communicates that you aren't driven by impulse. It shows you're capable of sitting with discomfort without lashing out. And that composure becomes something he respects deeply. Men find themselves chasing the women who bring peace, not chaos. And your ability to stay silent in moments where others would explode creates an atmosphere he wants to be part of. It's not that you tolerate disrespect. You don't. But you respond with thoughtfulness instead of impulsiveness. And that difference is magnetic. Another silent behavior that draws him in is your willingness to let him lead sometimes. Not because you can't lead, not because you're passive, but because you allow space for him to show effort, initiative, and desire. When you don't take over every plan, every conversation, every moment, he feels the room to step forward. And when he does, he begins to invest more naturally. Men chase what they feel they have an active role in building. Your silence allows him that space. You also become more attractive when you stop over-explaining yourself, when you make decisions confidently without needing validation, when you set boundaries without delivering long speeches. That simplicity signals certainty. It shows self-respect, it shows emotional maturity, and men are naturally drawn to women who move with that kind of clarity. The silence in how you protect your heart becomes another form of allure. You don't pretend to be unbreakable, but you don't hand your heart to someone who hasn't proven they can hold it. You give affection slowly, you open up gradually, you allow intimacy to grow at a healthy pace. That restraint doesn't push men away, it draws them in. It creates anticipation. It makes the connection feel earned instead of given. Men chase the women who require emotional effort, not in a demanding way, but in a meaningful way. And your quiet way of letting him earn deeper access makes him value it more. There is also a powerful silence in the way you honor your intuition. When something feels off, you don't argue with your own instincts. You don't silence your inner voice to keep the peace. You trust yourself. You adjust your behavior accordingly. You take a step back when necessary. And men can feel when a woman is guided by an inner compass that won't let her settle. That self-trust becomes deeply attractive because it shows that you are connected to your higher self, not lost in emotional confusion. And finally, your silence becomes a force when you allow actions, not words, to determine your choices. When you stop clinging to potential and start responding to reality. When you don't stay for empty promises or pretty sentences. When you quietly choose alignment over attachment. That choice shapes everything. It transforms the dynamic without needing a dramatic confrontation. It inspires him to show up with real presence or lose access to you. A woman who embodies these silent behaviors never has to beg for effort, attention, or commitment. Her energy speaks for her, her actions communicate her value, and her silence draws a man closer, not through pressure, but through the irresistible pull of authenticity, confidence, and self-respect.